Hello and welcome to another edition of Eye on Matteson. I'm your host, Laverne Murphy, and Village President Sheila Chalmers-Curran is the executive producer of the show. On this edition of Eye on Matteson, I have the newly elected Cook County Assessor, Fritz Kaegi. He's here to talk about his new property tax reform that will be affecting homeowners and businesses. We will also talk about some of his goals and accomplishments within his first 100 days. So please join me in welcoming Cook County Assessor, Fritz Kaegi. Thank you so much for joining Eye on Matteson.
Hey, happy to be here, Laverne. It's wonderful to be here in Matteson.
Great. So thank you so much for coming on. I know you're very busy with your schedule, and you've been in office for less than a year, and you've made some great strides putting a 100-day plan in place. What are some of the goals that you've accomplished with that 100-day plan?
Sure. The goals are focused around three values of transparency, ethics, and fairness, because we need to increase people's confidence that the assessments that we're doing are accurate and predictable and fair, and that everyone's treated in the same way. So one of the first things we did when we came into office is we put in an ethics executive order that extended our promise not to take campaign contributions from lawyers and appraisers who practice before the office. We made other undertakings that limit conflicts of interest. We brought in a wonderful new team of professionals, someone who ran lending for a major bank in Chicago to run our valuations group. My chief of staff was the great reformer David Orrs, chief of staff at the county clerk's office, many other people experienced with technology, and we created a new position, chief data officer. We brought in senior data scientists. We got someone who's a specialist in geographic information systems. We're really at the forefront of bringing technology into government. It's where big data hits government, and we can make big social achievements with that. And other things that we did is we brought in an auditor, the International Association of Assessing Officers, who are the global experts at this, and they reviewed areas where we need improvement, and then areas of risks and areas of strengths. And they just released their report before the county board. We've done a great many things in terms of transparency, putting all of our residential and commercial valuation models and assumptions out there for everyone to see, a really unprecedented level of transparency for our office. And we put in new rules for practitioners, lawyers, and appraisers who practice before office to really elevate the confidence that people have that we're running a fair process that just isn't suited for insiders. There's really been a problem of the perception of favoritism that we wanted to eliminate. So these are just some of the things we've been doing. We're doing a listening tour. I'm here in Matteson today because we'll be here with Commissioner Donna Miller talking about it today. I've just come from Springfield, where we've been working on important legislative initiatives too.
Right, great. Well, you know, one of the key words that you keep hitting on is transparency. That is so key in government, and that's what your constituents want to hear, to make sure that there's transparency there. Now, a lot of times we would hear over the years that the property tax system is broken. You know, there sure were some errors. So what are some of the things that you're putting in place to make sure that so-called system that was broken is now repaired or fixed or even improved?
Sure. So the transparency, it's not just in the modeling and the data, it's also in our processes. We think there were a lot of processes out there before that were kind of geared to people who knew the rules, but not everyone knew the rules. So we publish rules for people practicing before our office for the first time. We've eliminated the opportunity for insiders to get an unfair amount of bites at the apple that we thought that whittled down their share of the property tax bill at the expense of everyone else. A really important part of transparency is to show people how we're calculating their assessments. So we released our valuation model on the residential side line by line, so tech experts could inspect it, see if it's actually being used, see how fair it is, evaluate it. No assessor's office has ever done that before, and we thought we had a special burden to bear to be out there and show how we're coming up with numbers. And on commercial assessments, we've shown all the different assumptions that we make when we assess retail properties, office properties, multifamily properties, so that we can show people how we have estimated the value of their properties. Our job under the law is to estimate the market value of every property, but it's really important that people understand how we're getting there so we can have a predictable investment environment, because transparency is important for two reasons. Not only for elevating the confidence that people have in the fairness of the process, but also creating a more predictable environment, so people feel comfortable investing and taking the risk that you do when you invest your money and when you lease out a space. You need to feel confident that you know what your property tax costs will be.
Right, and you're absolutely, spot on with that. Again, with us having the Lincoln Mall redevelopment, we want to make sure we want to take out that risk factor. And so knowing what that property tax can ultimately be versus a projection and knowing what that predictability is, it makes our job a little bit easier, especially in economic development. So you talk about this new reform and this new calculation. So it's a law that you're trying to pass. And if you could tell me what stage is it currently in?
Sure. So the law that we have is the Data Modernization Bill, Senate Bill 1379. And this bill would adopt a common sense framework that's used in 17 other locations around the country. Red states like Florida and Tennessee and Georgia, and blue states like Virginia, Massachusetts, New York, Washington, D.C., where commercial property owners submit information about their rent and expenses and occupancy at the very beginning of the assessment process, so that we can do our assessments more accurately at the outset, and so that they'll be more predictable, so that people who are investing capital, people who are taking risk, people who own property can have a really good idea for what their assessment will be looking into the future. Because the more predictable that is, the more a tenant can feel comfortable going into something like the Lincoln Mall. When someone goes into the Lincoln Mall as a tenant, they're taking on the risk of a change in property taxes. And people can live with taxes that are high if they can plan around it. They can take into account how much rent they're paying and other things. But if the amount of tax that they're paying is uncertain, then everyone pulls in their horns a little bit. Banks aren't as eager to lend. People aren't as eager to invest in fitting out that space. And then it makes it harder for the owner of the space to actually rent it out, and that creates vacancy. So the bill is really about getting that data at the outset of the process so we can make our assessments more accurate and predictable. We have very strong privacy protections in the bill. It passed in the Senate, where Senator Toy Hutchinson was the sponsor. It passed by a bipartisan supermajority. We had 39 sponsors in the House. It was sponsored by Will Davis, Assistant Majority Leader, who also hails from the Southland. And because this bill was really important for the South suburbs, so that we could bring predictability to the South suburbs when we reassess it next year. Now, I'm sorry to say that it doesn't look like the bill is going to pass this session. We have 2 days left, and we were informed today that it's not going to be taken out of committee. So what do we have to do now? We have to go at it again, see if we can get it passed in the veto session as part of the larger property tax initiatives that the governor and the General Assembly have said that they will pursue. We're very hopeful of this. We had supporters across the spectrum, not only the South Suburban mayors and managers and the elected officials down in the South suburbs, but also real estate investors like Keith Lord, who's been investing down here, trying to be the master developer for that Lincoln Mall, that former head of the International Council of Shopping Centers. I know you were just out at their national conference. We had some of the biggest developers of real estate and multifamily property in Cook County supporting this bill. So it's a pity that we couldn't get it passed, but we will go back at it again. We have a wonderful coalition of people behind us, because it's not just about business, it's also about the school boards. It's about so many other government bodies that depend on us having a fair and accurate assessment system. And of course, most of all, it's about the homeowners. Absolutely. And persistent is key. Just continue to press forward, because, you've gone out there, you've done your research, you know that the model works because of other, as you said, states that have used it. So, again, if not this year, then hopefully next year that those things will happen. Definitely. But in the meantime, as far as property owners, especially homeowners, a lot of our viewers out here are curious, what other incentives or property tax rebates that they could take advantage of at this moment that they may not be aware of? Homeowners exemptions and things of that nature. Well, first of all, I'd like to note that some of the reforms that we're making in our office don't require the passage of a law. So we're going to be delivering for homeowners by by all the transparency that we're providing. We're investing in new data. We're using new models that will deliver better for folks in the Southland. We know people have been not treated well by the system, and because of your location here in Matteson, you're right next to Will County.
Yes.
You're right next to Indiana. I just drove up from Springfield, so you can feel the difference just from driving up. And so when we catch a cold in Cook County, y'all get pneumonia here in the south suburbs. So we need to be very, very attentive to that transparency modeling work to make sure we're getting things right, investing in better data. Now, there are important reforms out there that and exemptions that people can get. So in Cook County, we have several different investment incentives for businesses that invest in commercial and in retail properties. And they work in conjunction with the assessor's office and the municipality to get those incentives. And I know how hard you work. You have an exceptional team that I've heard from people in the private sector praising the great work that you do here in Matteson. So those incentives are very important so that we can have competitiveness with Will County in Indiana and neighboring jurisdictions. Also, there are many different exemptions that people are entitled to. If you are a homeowner, you're entitled to a homeowner's exemption if you're primary residence. If you are a senior, no matter what your income is and it's your primary residence, you are entitled to your senior's exemption. One of the legislative accomplishments that I think we're on the verge of getting this session is we've been working hard with Fred Crespo in the House and senators on the Senate side to get automatic renewal of the senior exemption so that people don't have to reapply every year to recertify that they're still over 65. In this day and age, you shouldn't have to recertify that in fact I am not getting younger each year.
Right, exactly.
Because it's a great hardship. More than 500,000 seniors every year in Cook County have to do this arduous task. It'll make our office more efficient if we're able to automatically renew it. If people miss their exemptions, like your homeowner's exemption or your senior exemption, you can get a certificate of correction issued by our office and get a refund for the amount of property tax that you overpaid because we didn't have the exemption information. You can look back 4 years for that. And also there are exemptions for veterans, especially if someone is more than 70% disability under the VA's definition. People are exempt from property taxes. So that's a very valuable benefit that people should know about. And then there's several other benefits for long-term homeowners. For seniors who have income under $65,000, there's a freeze that they are eligible for that is a very valuable benefit if property values are rising in their community. So all of these exemptions and incentives are there to serve homeowners, because we know this is people's main asset. For most families, this is the main thing that they own, and they have to pay what's basically a wealth tax every year. The burden is very unfair, and I think the passage of the fair tax that's just happened down in Springfield could also be something that will provide a lot of help to people in the Southland.
Great. And speaking about, the state, the state recently did a new property tax education reform. Do you feel that will help offset what you're doing, your efforts at the Cook County level?
We certainly feel that there is certainly not enough knowledge or education about our property tax system. I talk to people who have hundreds of millions of dollars, even billions of dollars invested in real estate in Cook County. People talk to elected officials who've been steeped in making policy around here for decades. Even they don't really understand our property tax system often. So that shame on us for creating so much uncertainty about that. So we are taking it upon ourselves at the Cook County Assessor's Office to do more to educate folks for how our very complex system works and how we fit into that. What people should remember about our assessment system is that we at the Assessor's Office, we don't set the taxes. We don't decide what the rates are. Local taxing bodies do that. They basically bake a pie, and then we divide up that pie based on based on what's the value of your property. Now, of course, this is a piece of pie that no one wants to eat, but it's very important that we divide the pie fairly according to the market price of everyone's property, but nothing more and nothing less. So that's what we're focused. That's an important thing to do, that education piece.
Right, absolutely. And they can always go on the Cook County website and find out more information about some of the exemptions that you talked about and everything actually we talked about today, because you are being transparent to make sure these things are there for individuals to find out more about Cook
We have
County.
many different resources for folks who live in Matteson. First of all, we're doing a listening session tonight here, and we'll do more events like that where I come out. Personally, our team also does workshops where we can help people build awareness about how to do an appeal, how to get exemptions. We have an office in Markham where people can go to ask questions if you need anything from the assessor's office. We want to get more information. We have a terrific staff there. I've been there many times to visit. And then, of course, we have on our website, cookcountyassessor.com, a lot of more information than used to be there. Information about what exemptions, how you can qualify them. We've simplified the appeals process, tried to make it more user-friendly, and we're going to be having a much revamped website coming soon by next year that we think will be even more user-friendly and provide more information and functionality to people.
Great. And I know, Assessor Kaegi, you have an extensive background. Would you mind sharing with our residents what has led you here to this particular position and having the passion for making sure there's change, and your background and what you've done previously before joining the Cook County?
Sure. So for close to 2 decades, I was an investment analyst and a portfolio manager. So I invested people's savings who they'd invested through their retirement IRAs or 401ks, and I ran a mutual fund, the Acorn Fund, that invested in small companies around the world. One of the things that I loved about my old job and where my background is in valuation, so valuing things, and in stewardship, being a steward over other people's savings. I really like the responsibility and duty and fiduciary duty that comes from that. And I think that what I saw in the assessor's office was a way to use my skills in valuing things and being a good steward, which I think are the key qualities that you need in an assessor, and have a bigger impact because I saw that our assessor's office I didn't think was delivering for people in the way it could. I thought we could run it differently, and I really enjoyed the service aspect of this. It's a job that only an analyst could love. Okay, there's a lot of we're taking lots of data and crunching them, but I enjoy that process. I feel like that this is a good use of what I got in me to have a big impact to deliver for the place where I'm from. I grew up in Hyde Park on the south side. I have lots of friends who went to Kenwood Academy with me. I'm class of '89, who now live down here, and they've told me how they didn't feel like the system was serving them well, that they might have bought a home 10 or 20 years ago and it's still underwater, and they didn't feel like the assessment system was delivering for them, that we needed to do a better job. And so I looked into that and I said, you know what, I can make a difference on this. So that experience, those roots of mine, are one of the things that led me into realizing I could have a bigger impact here.
Great. Well, it sounds like you'll definitely be hands-on, especially with your background. So you'll be right there, I'm sure, with the analysts and the individuals that you recently hired, making sure that you're combing through those numbers right with them. And so that's great. And we love to hear that you're going for change and you're fighting for change.
Definitely. And Laverne, we want to deliver for the south suburbs. We know, like I said, that when things aren't working well in our office, people really feel it here because you're on the knife's edge, being close to other jurisdictions. You've been hurt so hard by the housing crisis. We want to make sure that we're doing a good job so everyone can see all the strengths and assets you have here. You got all the rail networks of America coming through in Chicago. This is really the heartland of manufacturing in the U.S., of logistics, and we have so many strengths and wonderful homes here, all the wonderful resources. It seems like there's a golf course around every corner. So we got all these assets here. Let's have a system that serves everyone well. And that delivers for everyone. In so many parts of the United States, you don't even have to think about your assessor. I'm glad you got me on TV here today. But when our office is under scrutiny, it's usually because it's not something good is not happening. We're trying to make it a little bit more boring.
Oh, well, good. And we appreciate all of your efforts. And thank you for clearing the air about setting the property taxes. It's not Cook County, so but you're working together with the state, with the local government as well to make sure that, again, everything is transparent and making sure that things are predictable.
That's
so
right. We got our oar in the water, and
yes.
and you know, it's important to do a shout out to others who have their oar in the water too. You know, Will Davis. He worked in the state level to get a change for the school funding formula, and that's really important. 2/3 of property taxes go for schools, and that's because in this state we are number 50 in the United States for funding of schools by the state.
Can you repeat that one more time for residents?
So, in Illinois, we are dead last in the United States for state funding of schools.
Wow.
About 25% of school funding comes from the state. In most states, it's closer to 50%. So how do we make up the difference? We need to educate our kids.
Yes.
We've had to make it up in Illinois through property taxes. That's why our property taxes are high in Illinois. And that's why it feels so high here in the south suburbs, because housing prices fell, but that doesn't mean that you're going to change how much you want to spend on educating your children.
That's right.
So that creates a higher rate. And it's unfortunate that the state is leaving communities in such a position where so much has to be taken up by property taxes, which is people's main asset. So changing the school funding formula is important, because that means there's a path to having more funding for schools come from the state. So Will Davis is a great leader on that. That passed before. And the fair tax amendment, which was just passed by the General Assembly, will allow for a fair progressive taxation in the state, which can lead to a new funding stream for that funding formula. And it's probably one of the most realistic ways to get those tax levies starting to go in reverse. And no one has more riding on it than the south suburbs.
That's right. And it's good to know that people are in office that are working for us.
Absolutely.
Trying to make it happen.
We know how urgent it is. I hear stories and talk to my friends who live here every day, and we know how important it is. So, I joyfully, I get out every day thinking I'm doing good work here to try to fix the system.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, we've definitely seen so much of you, and you've been in office in less than a year.
Less than a
so
year.
You're out there,
not even
you're
200
pounding.
days yet.
Exactly. So you're definitely making a big impact, and we greatly appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Laverne. I'd love to be here. Happy to come back.
Thank you so much, and thanks for coming on Eye on Matteson. So thank you once again, Assessor Kaegi, for joining Eye on Matteson. And thank you, our viewers, for tuning in. I'm your host, Laverne Murphy, and our village president, Sheila Chalmers-Curran, is the executive producer of the show. Until next time, stay tuned, stay informed, and get involved. Working together, then divided, can make great things happen. Thank you for joining us.